June the 12th, 2026. Guys, you're looking at current satellite information coming in basically live. It's not delayed very much at all. What we're seeing is a couple different things. You got the feature of El Nino, again, pushing all this heat up. See it right here, stacking up here. And because Baja is kind of like a trap, a lot of that energy is being stored around that area. Now, this is the warmest probably water on the planet right now. But we've got a 20% chance of tropical development setting here just off the Bay of Campeche. And the Weather Channel, or excuse me, the Hurricane Center has predicted it to kind of skate up along the Mexico-Texas coast. Some models are showing it diving in right around the Rio Grande River, guys, and moving this way. Now, the moisture loop is important here. You notice how it comes up right there and pushes back over the Great Lakes. Check that out. That's important because people in the Southwest are hoping and praying, and rightfully so, for some moisture. I saw a video from a guy in Vegas. Many of you probably seen him before. But he was saying that not to worry about Meade, even though he's reporting how far it is down, because the El Nino was going to come in and fill up the lake. Well, they were not sure about that. I'm especially not sure about it because I've watched this satellite particular section now for a few months. But again, here, let's come in close. And again, the National Hurricane Center has it, again, skirting up the coast, moving past the Rio Grande and the border of Texas and Mexico. But the models will change. The actual Navy model that we watch at each year called NavGem, guys, that's got it pulling in right along the Rio Grande, possibly a little below that. But you got dry air here. What we're looking at is total precipitable water. Where can it come from? Where it's not going to come from. So again, this is going to loop up and go north. Everything on the west coast is pushing across the Rockies from west to east. That means any moisture that's not getting shut down by the dry air, that counts a lot, guys, because the evaporation rate and the heat is getting incredible there. But again, pull this up just a little. Heat trapped in the Baja. The moisture that's here, guys, is trying to make it go further north as it just updated. But this is a high pressure bubble. There's the Great Salt Lake right there. Now, there's problems all through this area. Let me say this. We are working now with a 0.26 per day drop at Lake Mead. But looking at some of the variables upstream, the Lake Powell, which is the main battery of Mead, and the outlets above that, and a few rivers coming in, are record lows. So that could put this 2.6 per day drop at Mead. Guys, we're only 13-something feet away from getting to 1035 and 70% shutdown of power going south. Anyway, 13 feet is not going to take long at that. If it stays at 0.26, we're at July 27th for that shutdown to begin. If we see an increase in what is going into Powell, guys, again, I'm so glad you did it, but one of you put in the comments a couple of nights ago about how the 14,000-foot peaks in the southern Colorados have no snow. And so that's where all the energy comes from. You're talking about a tremendous amount of snow shed in this area, and it's at zero now. And a lot of times there's still snow on those very top of some of those mountains, and they get a little bit of summer relief. It's zero. Look at this particular picture. Again, let me back that out and give you a bigger scope. Just a big high-pressure dome. And guys, I'm not going to complain, but we've been pretty much staying moist here in southern Mississippi. Here's the Mississippi River. We're here. And compared to years back, it's been a blessing. Now, right now, though, with the humidity at 81, it's 90, And our heat index is 114 degrees, even with a little bit of overcast, not a lot. Because as this warm air is pushing over to the east, I told you a few weeks ago, this El Nino is going to push all the way across the nation. And be very grateful that we are getting this moisture. And that this is going to continue to feed this. Now, parts of the Colorado River are dry, so that if it could maintain a little bit of moisture as it pushes into this high pressure area, that would help a lot. Just not sure it's going to happen because you have to kind of study and look at the patterns. Let's take a look at how the high pressure is going to set up when this storm starts to move in and see what chances we have in different locations of some moisture. But look, it is dry. Further north you look, the drier it is. Everything's trapped along the east coast and down into the south and southeast. Guys, if you remember, looking a few weeks back, I mentioned that it's going to be a rough season for hurricanes because we saw so many last year start to bend back and come off of Africa and bend back. Some even went back to Africa. That's very unusual, and that we may see this again, especially with that high pressure setup or setting up. But guys, what I did say then, I said if we watch the pressure over this area, if it's high pressure, then that's going to force any of these storms to stay further south. If we get a break, if we get a little bit of low pressure somewhere, then we could see a very large amount of water, possibly stronger storms. And that's really what's setting up now. Again, 20% chance, it says, this is in the western Gulf. This organized shower and thunderstorm activity has increased a little near a broad area of low pressure located over the Bay of Campeche. Now, it was 10% yesterday, so there is some strengthening, and this yellow cone was kind of moving into the Rio Grande area too. So we are seeing an extension of this and a curve. Notice that? Okay. Anyway, let me finish this. It says environmental conditions are forecast to be only marginally conducive for development before the system moves inland over eastern Mexico late Sunday or Saturday or Sunday night. The system could reemerge over the northwestern Gulf on Tuesday and Wednesday while interacting with a frontal boundary. That's what you're seeing. That's where the tornadoes have been coming from. But that frontal boundary. But there too, conditions are only expected to be marginally conducive for any development. I don't think it's going to become real strong. We could see some, thunderstorms, high winds, maybe tropical depression type weather. But what we need is moisture. We don't need damaging winds, but we need all the moisture we can get. Why? Because go back 3 or 4 years, and if you're in the southeast where we are at, it was incredibly hot. It was so dry. We were under a high pressure dome, just like the Four Corners are over in the southwest, and it was almost impossible, especially with a bunch of animals. It was tough. Okay, and so I learned that summer another valuable lesson: always thank our Father for rain. I don't care if you got to get in your boat, just keep saying thank you, Father, thank you. Compared to what's going on, what has happened here in the past, and what we're about to see in in Arizona, in Nevada, in California, through that area. Now, guys, this is our Navy model. This kind of covers a wide area. And looking at the U.S. Navy model, this is current information. We'll let it play through. The orange, guys, red is high pressure. The storms have to avoid it. It keeps pushing them down. But when they see an opening in the yellow and green, like we're seeing set up now through here, then they will follow that. And so that is going to be the path of the moisture. Now, that's changing. Why? Again, the high winds coming out of Colorado. It's been a no-burn days for dozens of states, tornadoes in Illinois, Indiana, raking through, crazy weather. But what we are seeing is right here, the edge of the high pressure tries to push through. It gets pushed back by this low pressure. See that? Here's high pressure right there. Now, here's the battle. And so it looks good for the Texas area, possibly Rio Grande River, Oklahoma, going up through there, possibly into Colorado. That's the best that could happen. Depends on which side it rains on. The one thing, let me say this about in the Southwest. Again, the guy that I was talking about, maybe you can mention it to him because you may watch it too. But Vegas D-Tech Joey, you guys have seen him. We linked to him a few years back when it first started getting low. Anyway, he was the one saying that he thought it was going to be okay. He may have been just trying to, quieten the audience. But if you get a chance to talk to him or say, now, Joey, make sure that you're right about that El Nino before you tell people that. And because it does not look like that to me. But I'll watch from so many different angles that he does not see. I can see where he's coming from because he was born and raised there. I think he's 49 or something like that. I watch all of his stuff. I really enjoy it, really like it. But again, he's going by past history. When the El Ninos come into the Vegas area, the lake rises, and he's correct, 100%. This is different. Guys, with the increased rate of drop, things are going to get pretty rough pretty quick in the desert. Let's take a bird's eye view of this entire situation. Again, we got the high pressure dome setting up here, and these are high level clouds, and what I've looked at is you've seen on the storm radars where it's yellow and red in the thunderstorm, but the edges will be light blue and green, and that moisture may never hit the ground. That's kind of what I've been seeing in the last few days here. But anything is better than nothing. Now here's the system. National Hurricane Center is watching. You can see some slight rotation in it. The quicker it comes ashore, that will diminish its chance of getting any stronger. But they're talking about it coming back offshore Tuesday, Wednesday, or something like that. And what that would do is put a foot back into the water, and nothing else. It will maintain some energy and pick up more moisture. You can see what's forming here. This is being pushed down. I've watched in the last few days. You guys have seen it too. Indiana, Illinois, major tornado outbreaks. And now look what's happening, guys. That area is going to dry out. And what we're looking at is kind of the southeast last chance that we're looking at maybe for a few weeks of any moisture. The reason I say that, if this pressure dome we're setting up, here's the Four Corners right there, there is Great Salt Lake. If this pressure continues to do this and push to the south and to the east, it's going to get very dry where we are at. We've been through it before. We've seen it rain everywhere around us. But that period 3 or 4 years ago, guys, this bubble, or one just like it, was setting over us. And every day it looked like we could get some rain. It would just come up and go around us like it is here. And it was sad. And I'm talking about, guys, you're talking about pine beetle trees and pine trees and all that, guys. It decimated the heat and the drought and the soil moisture, decimated the pine forest. We had to cut 150 in our front and side yard that were going to fall on the house if we didn't, because of pine beetles killed them in just a few months. Or that's how it appeared. And so it's a lot of effects, and that happened a few years back. We've had about 3, I say in 25 years, 3 pine beetle situations. I think the last one, though, from that major drought I'm talking about, did the most damage. And guys, let's take a look at Lake Mead for just a moment. It's important. This thing is happening faster and faster, and it's become more and more dangerous, and it's going to be a major disaster. Guys, you know that you go 72 hours in this heat without air conditioning or water, and things become critical. And just imagine a lot of people saying after 2 or 3 days, when this thing collapses totally, and the traffic jams on the highway alone would be disastrous. How many older vehicles have not been properly maintained? Or, if you're going to go on a 1,000-mile trip or something, you'll go do some maintenance and get everything checked and all that. What if you didn't? You're caught off guard, and then the interstates, I mentioned it before, become a complete bottleneck. And there's not enough FEMA in the world to cover millions of people on the highway. You can't get to them. And what they will do is set up, say, if there are people trying to get into New Mexico or Texas, that's where the help will be. If you can make it that far, because they can't get in that deep, in that heat to help you. They would run out of supplies in the first mile, and we could be talking about 1,000-mile journeys. The time for playing games is over with. And that's why I said, if you talk to Joey, mention that, because we don't want to see anybody left behind in that because they did not know. All right, now look, 14 days ago, on May 29th, we were at 10:50:56, and we watched it, and then that Monday morning, it was already at 10:49:73, just like we said it would be, changing on that Sunday night. So let's go back 14 days again. Remember, 10:50:56. Let's go to today. And again, guys, these are mountain times, and this is midnight to 1 o'clock, down the line, mountain. But anyway, we started out at 10:56, and guys, we are at 10:47:60 right there. Just a few tenths under 3 feet in 14 days. That is going to escalate again. There's problems with Flaming Gorge. There's a couple other rivers up there, Lee's Ferry and all, that are in just as much trouble. And they came in, we mentioned it, stopped Lake Powell at around 7,000 cubic feet a second. Now it's back up to around 8,000, all because they're trying to save Meade. How far will they go down before they sacrifice the turbines at Powell? And Flaming Gorge can only go so low before it has no water coming out of it. And you saw the satellite images of this record-breaking heat dome setting up. There's nothing mainstream media about that at all. It is cold, hard fact. Now, you guys up in the higher areas and are not down in I guess you got the Sonoran Desert there, and you got that entire area all the way up into Vegas that will be affected. And again, a home that you so used to going into and cutting on the lights and the air conditioning, getting a shower and getting cooled off, or already have it happening. When that doesn't happen, that becomes a heat trap until the actual temperature balances. Humidity, not much there between the inside and outside. And then you're talking 110, 115 degrees. And once your body gets over about 106 for any amount of time, it's on a downhill run. You got to rehydrate really quick, like maybe even drips, things like that, heat stroke. Now let's go back to the 14-day average a minute. It doesn't include today, but we know where we're at. We're at 60. Okay, just under 3 feet coming up from 56 here. But the content of the lake is dropped about 1,000 acre feet. See that from 613 to 516. The inward flows, this is from Powell and the other places I mentioned, but mainly Powell. But Powell relies on the upstream to have anything left to send downstream. But inflows to Meade average 8615. Remember and I said this a few weeks ago, and now the number's really short, but I showed it when they change from around 7,000 cubic feet. Again, I think the Bureau of Reclamation stepped in, said, well, we got to get more downstream. And they did. So they're averaging 8.6, but you're seeing 8.8, 8.9. Here's a couple of 9,000s in the 92s we mentioned. And so they are depleting more from upstream to try to maintain this. The outflow is averaging about 15,442 cubic feet a second. That hasn't changed that much, but the only reason it hasn't is because the increase here. And right now they're putting a pretty good hard drain on upstream. But guys, those numbers don't look good at all. We could move Meade up in time. We could move Powell up in time, dropping before July the 27th. So guys, this is not a movie. You've heard me warn about hurricanes and things like that. for years and years in different things, volcanoes and solar flares, whatever it is, earthquakes, whatever. But this is the most serious thing I've ever seen coming down on so many people at one time, and it's not like a hurricane where in a couple of weeks you may have the power cut back on when they cut the trees out of the power lines and restock and rebuild half the system. That hope is not there in a desert that should have never been built up the way it was. It's not coming back. So you can wait to the last moment to make a decision. You can tuck your head under, and I'm not talking to anyone specific here, especially my followers. You know how I feel about it, and I know how you feel about it. But it's something. There's people that listen that a little different every day, and people share. But I cannot help but emphasize how serious it is, guys. And I've also seen reports, not on YouTube, but just different sources, saying that if they can maintain the outflow from Powell to Meade, everything will be okay. But there's talking about the current inflow of roughly 11,000 cubic feet per second is not primarily coming from natural mountain snowmelt. That's what I was talking about with the tall mountains completely bare. They're draining the upstream lakes. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? So they will not be able to maintain that outflow to Meade. Says Bureau Reclamations has been forced to make massive emergency water releases from upstream reservoirs, specifically bypassing over 9,000 cubic feet from Flaming Gorge Reservoir, just to prop up Lake Powell's water levels and prevent it from dropping below critical hydropower thresholds. And I guess my point is on this and a few other things is that people are used to the average, see the lake get low, El Ninos come in, monsoons, and it goes back up, snow gets in the mountains, and you got that back up through the spring and early summer. None of that's there. None of it. So the only reason that they're keeping it, and in some of the reports, they're saying it actually, that if Powell will just stay at 11,000 cubic feet, it will be fine. Unfortunately, Powell is dropping as quick as Meade and may have about the same amount of time because they're not putting, 11,000 feet downstream from the snowmelt. They're draining everything upstream. And like I said, the spring runoff is the vital annual mountain snowmelt window that fills western reservoirs. The current runoff is nearly non-existent. If you do get rain in this monsoonal situation or a little bit of tropical, then it's going to evaporate and soak into the ground way before it gets to a riverbed. Now, what they're looking at Lake Powell, guys, is the fact that they may have to, just to save Powell, they're sending out again up to 9,000 cubic feet a second. They may have to cut that in half to 45 cubic feet a second and hope that helps. But they're saying if it cuts its release back from the current estimated June surge down to a minimum survival flow of around 4,500 cubic feet per second, Lake Meade's total inflow, including Grand Canyon side streams we talked about, would instantly drop from 9,000 cubic feet to roughly 5,500 cubic feet. Now, guys, we are in June, okay? And so that's what I'm saying in those numbers where we've got it figured down to 2.6 or 2.6 feet per day drop. That can double so fast. And when you double a time that's coming up, this is June 12th, and we're talking about just staying on those numbers July 27th before 70% of the downstream power is cut. That's the beginning because water will be next. And then there's massive trouble because when you run out of water, guys, the government cannot create more of it. It's a simple equation, probably one of the most simple equations on the planet. You have two ingredients, right? Hydrogen and oxygen. You have the amount of each, just like a recipe. Man can't make it, though. Think about that. Not on any type of scale that would matter. So the nature of this planet is shifting and shrugging this beast off its back that was created by man through this dam system. It's reclaiming it. And there's nothing we can do about it, whether you like it, lump it, hate it, whatever. It's coming, and it's coming fast. Guys, I want to also emphasize how conservative I'm being on these numbers, because we just saw that Lake Mead is taking in roughly 8,000 to 9,000 cubic feet per second, but they're letting out 15,200, okay? Not quite double, but just about. But that puts it at a deficit right now. In other words, it's putting out 6,200 cubic feet per second more than it's taking in. Now, if that drops to 5,500 cubic feet inflow, and you try to maintain that 15,000 cubic feet outflow, which they're saying they're going to try to demand it. It's in the law, but one thing about it, lawyers and judges can't make rain either. But it says that would create an escalation of the daily decline, putting in the numbers. So when you factor in the 0.26 feet per day is already being lost to evaporation and the drop, adding an extra 3,500 cubic feet per second to the physical drainage deficit will cause the daily elevation drop to skyrocket. That's what I'm afraid of. And so this was a simple change, just looking at the amount of water coming to Powell, the amount of water that it can let out to Mead and what Mead is letting out, and looking at the average on that and coming up with these numbers. But what does that do? Again, current drop 0.23 feet per day, add 0.03 for evaporation, which that may be conservative too, but that drops it to 0.38 to 0.41 feet per day. You want to see where that goes? And using the most conservative number, just the 0.38, not the 4.1, you go 35 days and you're at 1035, guys, 13.3. We're right at 13 feet below that, above that shutoff point. So 35 days, guys, what would that put us? July the 17th. It's knocked another 10 days off of that time period. Again, using the conservative 31/35. So in other words, there's not a lot of time left. I know a lot of you are sick of hearing about this, but this is too important. It's like turning your back on the worst natural disaster in the human civilization, other than maybe a worldwide flood. Okay? That's how serious this is going to be. And that effect is going to reverberate across all of this nation. It will go into Mexico, because there's a lot of folks from Mexico that come here to work, agriculture, other things, whatever it is, and those jobs just are not going to be there, guys, if there's not water for not only to plant and grow, but, you've got to have water for everything. Whatever it is, you got to have it. And so there'll be migration south. Of course, it won't be much west, because California is going to get cut off too. They think by law they have the largest rights, the ones that they can keep the Imperial Valley, irrigated as long as they need to. Again, the river doesn't think like that. The river's taking back the desert, both the Sinai Desert and the Mojave, and maybe some other places. But guys, if it goes to that 0.40 feet per day, and that's strictly looking at the calculated input and outputs, no imagination, except, and it really is not imagination when I look at that satellite image of the heat dome over the area. It's not imagination to say there's no rain, not yet. But at that, Mead would be losing 12 vertical feet of water every month, and it's only 13 left to get there. But what does that do? It accelerates it down very quickly by early next year into the bottom of Lake Mead, where only the third straw can draw out. In that depth, power generation is over with. That's simply to draw water into Vegas. That's why they built it. They have a problem. I mentioned it. All of the Colorado River, most of it, and all of that Vegas area is federal land. They will step in, take the spigot away from Vegas, and they will do whatever they feel is the best thing. Line up water lines for people, or truck it up, or whatever, or support the military that's controlling the crowds. We don't know. But do you think that when this goes down, and by the time we're into August, that there's not major trouble? And it may come quicker than that, because once they lose 70% of the cheapest power on earth through hydropower, they're going to immediately hit the grid so hard the rolling blackouts will start. You may not be out without power the whole day or without water the whole day. And what are they going to do? Tell you to cut back in peak hours when you're trying to stay cool enough to stay alive? They just overplanned everything, and greed took over. It should have never happened. But if you look at it, I've said it before, looking at history, it's just a blimp, a millisecond of time. But it's going to end. It's going to start ending quickly. It's going to take it a little time to drag out. There will be a few survivors that have access to the rivers and things like that under normal conditions. But if this winter sets up like last winter, that's going to become scarce also. And something else you got to look at. Running these numbers based on the current volume reveals the current volume we're seeing now, about 2.3. Exactly how long Flaming Gorge can stand alone on the river's sole engine. In other words, the only reason Powell's staying steady is that they're draining Flaming Gorge. It holds approximately 2.83 million acre-feet of water, about 77% of its live capacity. If all natural high country inflows are zero, like the mountain snow, and Flaming Gorge is forced to single-handedly generate the 9,000 cubic feet per second downstream to Lake Powell and to Lake Mead, the physical limits of the reservoir dictate the exact timeline. Now, it can't be drained all the way to zero. Not all of them can be, because it's not, you don't have an outlet at zero. But the 1 million acre foot cap is what they're dealing with. It says the absolute maximum emergency water allocation, again, Flaming Gorge, permitted for release through April 2027, guys. And this is numbers from the 2-year Bureau of Reclamation project that they scheduled, that they thought was going to happen, okay? You won't see a 2027 in any of this. But it says the drawdown drops the lake by 35 vertical feet to its operational safety floor, 59% capacity. Now, that changes the Bureau's numbers of April to 8 weeks from today. And think about it, it makes perfect sense. We're talking about less than 8 weeks for me to be in trouble. But the Flaming Gorge is so much smaller than both Powell and, of course, Meade. It doesn't have nearly the acre-feet storage, and it is getting zero input either. But 8 weeks, what does that say? Looking at the calculations, the entire Colorado River system will be collapsing. We're looking at, again, Flaming Gorge conservatively in 8 weeks. But Meade is not going to make it that far until not to 1035, and it's going to be a race downhill from there. But again, we shut off one battery upstream from Powell. Powell shuts down, Meade shuts down, in that order. Now, we don't know how the government will react to or knee-jerk or whatever. They have contingency plans for all of this, believe me. They understand what's happening. They're not telling us a lot about it, but we can see for ourselves. Guys, and what happens next? The moment that feed stops, the daily drops are going to be like an elevator on a broken rope. So it says the moment the feed stops, the protective buffer vanishes. Without that upstream water, Lake Powell's elevation will drop immediately. At that point, it faces hitting its own critical 3490 foot, just like Meade's is 1035, power pool, which would shut down the Glen Canyon Dam turbines completely. So we're looking at almost a parallel fall between them, and that's still getting upstream battery or upstream water from Flaming Gorge and other areas. And that is not going to last much longer. They're saying 8 weeks. That is a conservative number because it's a small reservoir. And guys, what you do, like in the example of Flaming Gorge, you got right here the daily drainage, 17,858 feet acre a day. Weekly drainage, 125,000 acre feet per week. The new recalculated hard stop for Flaming Gorge, which, like I said, 2 months is conservative, is 5.36 weeks. That matches very closely to a week or so before Meade and Powell will go down. Definitely Meade, 5.36 weeks. So all of the stuff that we've been reading from the Bureau of Reclamation, guys, that talks about by fall or summer of 2027, or, maybe end of November, we're going to see some things happen. Guys, they're rewriting the books now. They're having to. It's in your face. But we're watching it, guys. I just want to come in, step in. Hope that you guys get some moisture, either out of the Pacific storms that appear to be pulling offshore, or maybe we'll get one that comes a little stronger down into the Gulf of America and push some more moisture your way. Right now, guys, don't complain about the water, whatever you do. Now, if you're in a big flooded area, you may want to move. We don't want to see what happened with the last hurricane that went up through the mountains in the East Coast. So, I'm not saying that, but just be thankful. Because each time it rains, it knocks a few degrees off the temperature. And you got to cut grass more, but that's okay too. We're watching it. You watch it. Guys, I love every one of you. Our Father loves you. Stand tall. Share the information. If you're in that area, make sure you got a backup plan. Be safe.